I'm delighted to welcome to Moneycontrol today the Defence Secretary, Mr. Rajesh Kumar Singh, also holds additional charge of the Department of Defence Research and Development, also as Chairman of DRDO as additional charge. Yeah. Many hats you hold, sir. Sir, thanks very much for joining us on Moneycontrol. So you have very forcefully argued that technology is the foundation of strategic power and India is looking for strategic autonomy. Now, you have been at the helm of the Ministry of Defence with the Honorable Raksha Mantri for a long time now, at least more than 2 years now. So can you outline for us some of the key measures? There's been a big change in our ecosystem of defence under your guidance. So can you outline for us some of the key policy measures that have enabled this shift in providing a level playing field for, say, the private sector, ease of doing business, long-term visibility on orders? What has changed, sir, in the last 2 or 3 years?
So yeah, first of all, I'm delighted to join you today. I've been here for 1.5 years actually, not 2 years. But yeah, I do agree and I continue to believe strongly that technological sovereignty and industrial strength will decide your military capabilities as well. And our job is to ensure that we increasingly design, develop and produce our own weapons and platforms. The structural transformation we are trying to do really is that we create a level playing field for the private sector as well as for startups, create visibility in terms of orders on the demand side given that it is a single buyer market, and we create ease of doing business on the supply side so that both new entrants and existing players feel confident and make investment in our defense ecosystem. Now the result, we've also tried to ensure indigenization in terms of making sure that in our system of procurement, 75% of our budget is earmarked for domestic orders, that imports become an exception rather than a norm, and also ensuring that within this domestic procurement, it is the IDDM category, which is Indigenous Design, Development and Manufacturing, which gets top priority.
So, sir, India has about 16 defence PSUs, 500 licensed defence companies, 17,000 MSMEs, roughly. I mean,
correct.
So, what kind of growth from where you sit, sir? How has this changed in the last 2 3 years? What kind of growth do you foresee for companies working in this sector, and what's your message for investors, sir?
Right. So, this is a sector which is obviously has reached a certain critical mass. It is growing well. It is backed up. Given the fact that there is a monopsony, the government buying will matter, and government buying is going to step up. As you see, our budget has been increased significantly in the last financial year. So, there is a budget support. There is this overall geopolitical conflicts that have risen at the highest rate perhaps since World War II across the world. So, there is an upside in this market, and therefore, there is investor interest. Now, from our side, we are supporting it by, as I said, on the demand side through visibility in orders, and on the supply side through greater ease of doing business. And some of the interest that you are that is being reflected is shown, for example, by the fact that we had about 250 odd industrial licenses issued till 2015. Thereafter, in the last 10-11 years, the number has gone to over 800. So, and we have multiple licenses coming in every day. So, the investor interest is there, the venture capitalists are coming in, the startups are moving in,
right,
and the government is trying to ensure that in this sector, we support them through orders that are placed as quickly and to ensure that particularly the startups who have a funding issue, who have funding constraints, we give them orders so that they are able to, capitalize on the investments and on the technology development that they have done.
So, as you rightly said, given that the government is the only buyer in this case, any specific measures you might want to highlight, sir, on how we encourage startups in terms of research funding and things like that? How does that work? How has that changed, sir?
So, from the DRDO, we now have a internal earmarking that 25% of our R&D budget is reserved for industry, for startups and for academia. And therefore, we also have this scheme of centers of excellence. I think we have some 11 centers of excellence across different academic institutions where we work along with the academia in specific domains in defense. As far as procurement is concerned, defense is the only department which has a scheme for called IDEX, which actually promotes startups, ensuring that they are supported till they build prototypes. Thereafter, of course, they have to go through a bidding process. But in our revised defense procurement procedure, we are trying to bring in systems where if something is developed in consultation with or in conjunction with the services or with us, that we should give him some repeat orders at least for a certain period of time,
right,
say 5 years, until and thereafter make it open. So all those reform measures are either completed or they are on the anvil under the new DAP procedure that we have, the draft of which is already available in the public domain.
Mr. Singh, you mentioned that geopolitical conflicts are at a height since Second World War. We've seen Iran, we've seen what's happened in Ukraine, Russia. We saw Op Sindoor last year.
Yes.
So what lessons have we learned from Op Sindoor? I mean, we saw drones being really sort of top of mind and dominating the conflict that time. So we've seen Ukraine producing about 11 million drones, that kind of stuff. So how are we changing the way we look at drone production and all of that? What has changed since then, sir?
I think obviously we have to ensure that we keep up with the trends in modern warfare. It is very clear that increasingly we are going to see much more usage of unmanned systems of precision, long range, standoff weaponry of different types, of a much greater focus on autonomous systems of different types, land, maybe underwater as well, and of course drones is what everybody talks about and how it has made a significant difference in the Middle East and the Ukrainian conflicts. Our job is to ensure that we develop a drone ecosystem of global levels in this country. We've tried to again do that by ensuring that for drones and for low cost but fast moving, where the technology is fast moving, we provide a system of quick inductions, quick trials. And that you will see, we've already done that through the emergency procurement right after Operation Sindoor. Almost 31,000 crores worth of equipment was ordered very, very quickly. Bulk of it on drones and counter drone systems and lightweight radars, things like that. Over time, you will see that in these areas, government, MOD is not a development department. Government, its support will be through the orders that it places. But for drones, for different items of new age warfare, we will ensure that quick inductions are done through fast track procedures to give support to this fast evolving drone and unmanned systems, that ecosystem in this country.
Right. So you've talked very eloquently in the past about lessons from the IPL model for indigenous production in mobile phones, where in iPhones is about 18-19% indigenous.
Yes.
There's been critique about that in some fora. So do you see a similar models are emerging in defense production with an element of indigenization or end-to-end?
Right. So again, I mean, people deliberately misunderstand what you say. Obviously there will be areas where you should be doing design, development, manufacturing, everything should be in India. And that applies to the LCA Tejas, the Pinakas, all of those. There are areas where your TRL level is low. That is the area where I'm saying that you might need to do some level of, you may need to start with an MRO or with a lower level of indigenization, and then gradually build up that ecosystem so that you achieve design and technological sovereignty. So depending on the TRL level, you can go for assembly in certain areas. If it's 5 or 6 or higher, you should be able to go for entirely IDDM, which is Indian design and developed and manufactured, and hopefully the bulk of our procurement will be in that category, but it's not going to happen overnight despite whatever some people might say or claim.
So the union budget for this year is reserved about 2.19 lakh crore for capex, about 29,100 crore for defense research and development, and 75% of capex only for defense contracts. So, sir, from where you sit, what shift you are seeing on the ground in terms of end-to-end manufacturing for domestic companies to meet that target of 75% of capex being spent within non-Indian companies?
So, in the last 2 years that I've been here, we've comfortably exceeded that 75% figure because we've simply ensured that most of our contracts are signed with domestic players, and we hope to ensure that that continues to be the case. As I mentioned, that will involve many cases which are full IDDM and many cases which are what we call buy Indian, which means that you will have a private or public Indian company, but the technology and some of the components may be coming from outside. The notion that we can avoid that and go straight away for end-to-end comprehensive indigenization is a pipe dream. It can't be done overnight. But as I said, where we have TRL 6 plus, 5 or 6 plus, we should go aim for that. But the journey should be clear that as we indigenize, we gradually develop this large ecosystem and over time ensure that most of our complex platforms, most of our equipment gets manufactured in India with technology and design and software control in our hands.
Right. So as I understand, roughly in terms of PSUs and private sector, the split is around 76%, 24% in terms of production.
Yeah.
Do you see that split changing as you go forward, sir, with more share of private sector?
So the private sector share used to be about 20% a few years back. It has been growing at a faster pace than the public sector, which is why it has now reached 24%. And to that extent, the PSU share has shrunk. Through the steps that we have taken in terms of changing the defense procurement manual by removing this product reservation for certain PSUs, when it comes to ammunition, or for example, sort of doing the unthinkable like opening up the AMCA program for the private sector as well as the public sector bidders. All of those are steps that are intended to ensure that over time we reach a stage where this becomes a 50-50 split between the public and the private sector.
Right. Sir, also one of the things that the government is really pushed for is the creation of defense corridors in UP, in Tamil Nadu.
Correct.
So what is the level of interest you are seeing in the defense corridors? What is the difference in focus and how are they shaping up from where you sit?
So the last figures that I saw, we have overall commitments in terms of investment of about 70,000 crores across these two corridors and about 10,000 crores of investment which is grounded already. So it is promising, it is moving up, and we've seen some public sector units like BrahMos setting up near Lucknow. There are quite a few projects are happening or are about to be grounded. So yes, it's promising, and I hope we can sort of ensure that these corridors become defense hubs in the future.
Do we see, can we expect more defense corridors to be set up?
It's frankly, defense corridor is not a scheme in the sense that we are setting up some infrastructure and asking people to come. It is more of a signal that these areas are where we think there is a possibility of having a large defense ecosystem. So it really doesn't matter so much. It's more of an announcement. The real issue is, as I said, providing visibility in terms of orders, and Government of India and the state governments providing ease of doing business, including in many cases state governments give capital incentives, other types of programs for support. So that combination of factors will drive defense industrial investment in this country.
So in terms of where the visibility of orders and where we are seeing a lot of interest, in terms of other countries also now very interested in Indian weaponry. So things like Pinaka rocket launchers, Akash missiles, BrahMos. So we are seeing a lot of production in that and interest in that. What are the core sectors, sir, where you see India taking a lead in defense production including for other countries?
So I'm going to link this with what I mentioned earlier about our TRL levels, where we have achieved design and reached a stage where we have sovereignty in a sense over the software, the design, the upgrade capability. So I see it in land systems and missiles, armored land systems, missiles, rocket launchers like Pinaka, which are long-range rocket systems. A lot of the shipbuilding activities as well. So in all of these areas where our TRL level is high, even platforms like the Dorniers and of course the BrahMos, in all of these areas there is a tremendous scope for getting more export orders. The fact that many of these platforms have seen action during Op Sindoor also ensures that there will be interest. And you mentioned BrahMos. We have potentially 3 finalized orders. Philippines in the first phase, and both Indonesia and Vietnam on the verge of getting the final contracts done. Akash and the various types of artillery systems, we've had a lot of success with exports to Armenia, for example, and there's a lot of interest all around. So yes, this is a good time for defense exports. We reached almost 39,000 crores last year, and we feel that 50,000 crores by 2030 will be easily achievable.
Right. So, sir, in terms of the defense sector and private investment in it, what is your sense of how much quantum of investment do you see coming in from the private sector over the next, say, 4 to 5 years?
Yeah, that is, I mean, we've never done a study of that type, frankly, and perhaps we should. What we have done is the Department of Defense Production has created a kind of a registry or a deposit, a kind of a large registry of all grounded industrial licensees and defense industries in the country. Maybe we can take a step forward and also look at investment, but I would not be able to venture a guess right now. But I do want to say that, as I mentioned, about if we have a capital a capex of 2,19,000 crores for the current year, 75% of that will be spent in this country. So about 1,52,000 odd crores at least will be spent in this country. We reached 172 lakh crores of overall production. That, of course, that is right. After adding exports. So that the size of the market is very clear. The investment leading up to that volume of domestic production, I would not be able to give a clear-cut answer right now, but maybe it's worth studying.
So, in terms of, you mentioned the weapon systems that many countries are interested in, from BrahMos to Pinaka and so on. So, sir, roughly, very broadly speaking, how many Indian companies are currently exporting weapons tech, and how do you expect that number to change as we go forward?
Yeah,
what's your sense?
That's quite a surprise to me also, that actually there are as many as 145 countries which export different kinds of equipment, from the bulletproof jackets and ballistic helmets to the more complex systems like the BrahMos, the Akash. PSUs, of course, are also getting a lot of export orders now, particularly for the standard artillery shells and things like that, munitions. So, in fact, the growth in the recent past has been more by the in terms of public sector exports, taking advantage of the, the global, some of the geopolitical conflicts leading to a lot of countries rearming. During 25-26, we had 1,800 export authorizations to over 100 countries. And as I said, about 145 different companies doing it. So yes, it's again, defense exports, like the defense industry in general, is now reaching a critical mass.
Right. So we've signed so many deals for export of defense equipment, as you pointed out. So in terms of the PSUs, what is their capacity utilization? I mean, do you think that they're ready for this kind of an expansion, or what are the challenges you see from that front?
I think they are certainly, I mean, their order books are full, particularly companies like Munitions India, for example. Their order books are quite full, and they will perhaps have to look at additional capex to expand their capacity, because they may be already fully utilizing their capacities. That is something that we will need to look at for the future. But I'm very clear, I'm agnostic about it. It can be a PSU, it can be a private company. What I want is industrial capacity in this country to produce both platforms and ammunition, and that is what we are aiming at.
So is there space for any new defense PSUs to be set up?
I don't think so. I think I would imagine, I mean, again, if you ask my personal opinion, I think we have these large number of new companies formed by the corporatization of the OFBs. And of course, we have the older companies, which are the shipyards and the HAL type of companies. For the newer companies, maybe some round of consolidation rather than further, new companies is perhaps more relevant.
Right. So you've opened up missile production for private players, right? So will this only concern production? Are we targeting design development as well beyond the BrahMos, or are we looking for JVs international firms on the BrahMos model?
No, in missiles, we are for the most part looking at DRDO technologies, which for a long time was earmarked essentially for one missile producing PSU, which is Bharat Dynamics Limited, BDL. Now that we have, and given the changing nature of warfare, we need much larger volume of missile production. The production scale has to go up. Therefore, it is in that sense that we want to do TOTs to the private sector companies, and we intend to ensure that when it comes to conventional missiles at least, we will allow private sector also to come in and seek TOT and start production of those kinds of missiles.
So for the AMCA project, the fighter jet project, how far are we down on that? You mentioned how it's been opened up, the unthinkable, what was once thought unthinkable in terms of opening up for private players. So by when can we expect an indigenous 5th generation fighter, and where are we in this project now, sir?
So I think the RFPs have been issued to 3 consortia. One is a pure private sector company, that is TASIL. The other 2 are private public consortia, L&T with Bell and Bharat Forge with data patterns and BEML. Pre-bid meeting was conducted on 1/7 for these parties. The last date of submission of this RFP is 26th of July, and thereafter we will hopefully move towards finalization of this bid. We expect I think 5 prototypes are being looked at, and we intend to sort of try to ensure that the first prototypes should be flight tested by 2028.
Right.
If I remember correctly, that's right, 2 years from there.
So there's been a lot of debate around the Sukhois as well. Is that something that is what's the thinking on regarding the Sukhois or new aircraft being bought outside of the AMC?
No, we have not thought about Sukhois. If you're asking about the new version of the Sukhois,
the new versions.
No. But we are actively looking at upgrading the existing Sukhois, which we have been producing under license from the Russians. It's a success story. It's a very potent platform with the induction of the BrahMos missiles on it, and we are hoping to upgrade and improve it further.
Right. So, what's your view on sort of improving the delivery timelines on HAL, which has been a lot of debate around that, public debate around that in the past. So, what's your view on that, and when can we see the induction of the LCA-2 in operational roles?
Yeah, so LCA-2, I think 7 prototypes are now ready, now that the engines have come. Air Force inducting them involves some kind of a checklist of things that they should have achieved. My understanding is that on some of the critical areas they are almost there. So, I mean, the last figure I have or the last data I have from the HAL is maybe by September they intend to meet whatever minimum requirements Air Force has. Others, they are giving them some concessions. So, hopefully by September, and if the engine delivery program keeps up, August onwards, they are supposed to give 2 engines every month. So, with that available, I hope by sometime after September, we can start inducting these aircraft in good numbers.
Okay. So, how do you, you're also acting as the chairman of DRDO along with the Defence Secretary's role. So, how do you see the role of DRDO in enabling the systemic shift in our defence architecture and our ecosystem overall?
I think that's one of the sort of unsaid or not so well known stories about our private sector, that almost all of the private sector companies that have come up have relied on or taken technology transfers from DRDO, and which is quite natural because after all, R&D in defence is almost exclusively the preserve of the DRDO. And now we have finally shown that we will give contracts to the private sector based on the DRDO technologies. You must be aware of the ATAGS, which is already, the contract is signed, 7,000 crore worth. There's a contract for close quarter carbines, again signed for about 4,500 crores. They're one of the largest small arm orders in the world. There's a whole bunch of other private sector and public sector players who are producing things like the Pinaka, both the launchers and the warheads. So, in total, my understanding is that there are some 145 odd companies have taken maybe 2,000 plus TOTs from DRDO. And overall, if you see the volume of production that this has entailed, if you see it cumulatively over the years, over the several decades, that reaches almost 7 lakh crores. So, in a sense, DRDO has played a vital role through its technology transfers in creating this volume of defence production, where the private sector increasingly is playing a very important role.
So, can you tell us a bit more about, sir? I mean, you mentioned the IDEX program also in the beginning in terms of investments the government is making, the private sector is making. So, what are your key focus areas in terms of technology investments, sir, in your view?
Yeah. So, obviously, there are areas where there are gaps, and the jet engine is the most well known of that, but there are also areas, all kinds of engines, right from the larger capacity tank engines to the engines for our missile programs to the drone programs. In all of that, there is significant import dependence, and we have to work on that. We are working on some of those, some through large scale programs which will involve cabinet approvals, others where we will do research and development directly. So, that is one specific sort of gap that I can think of. Of course, there are other areas where we've made a lot of progress, where the TRL level, as I mentioned, has reached 5.5, 6 plus, and where we can hopefully increasingly design and develop things ourselves. Other area of dependency, frankly, is in terms of materials. A lot of the permanent magnets, some of the payloads for our drones and even for our satellite systems, there significant levels of dependence still exist. So those are the areas where we really need to work much more.
So we are also presiding over possibly a major shift in our operational architecture, theatre commands. When do you expect to see those changing and being implemented?
That subject is not really mine, although I have, I've had consultation on this with my counterparts in DMA. Timelines I will not be able to guess, but the dialogue is on, and let's see where it goes.
Right. So, in changing the outlook of our defense sector, and there is so many changes that have happened. You talked about the way the manufacturing process has changed, the encouragement to private sector and so on. So have we drawn, what are the other countries we must have drawn, we might have looked at other countries, how they do it. Which are the countries you looked at closely in terms of where we are drawing lessons from and adapting to for our purposes?
Yeah. I think I would say that if you look at technology development, technology absorption, technology creation, among our Asian peers, I think Korea is a pretty good example. They have done well with their defense production, homegrown defense production. US is a world leader and continues to be in disruptive technologies of different types. So yeah, I mean, those two are probably some of the areas, and of course we have to learn from the Chinese as well in terms of quickly absorbing technologies and then developing and building it at industrial scale much faster than other countries have been able to do. So yes, I think there are good examples from all of these countries. We have to use that model of, as I mentioned, a hybrid production model where public and private sector are both given an equal role, where we have, however, hard-wired, very strong accountability in terms of timelines, in terms of contract fulfillments, and in terms of accountability. Unless we do that across the board, both for the PSUs and the private sector, the contract is the first part. Thereafter, ensuring that the contracts are fulfilled on time, where all of them have an active role. Those are going to be key to us being able to emulate some of the global peers that I mentioned.
So one final comment. We've been arguing that given all the work that is happening in the last 2 or 3 years, that there is a new military industrial complex being created in this country. And would it also be, would you agree with that, A? And B, would it also be fair to say that given the numbers you've just talked about in terms of exports, that we are now, just like we were once the back office of the world for IT, we may be moving towards becoming a back office in terms of defense as well, in terms of creating manufacturing. Would that be a fair characterization?
I do agree that India needs to develop a large defense industrial ecosystem. Military industrial complex is a bit of a pejorative word. It was used in the US in the context of trying, I mean, the military industrial complex takes over your geopolitical sort of strategy and creates wars all around the world to sustain it. I would prefer to call it a defense industrial complex, and it is meant for our defense, and it is meant to ensure that the world's largest populated country has the sort of hard power that it needs to protect itself and to protect its during this critical phase of our national development, when we move up the ladder in terms of becoming a top 2 or 3, ultimately maybe even number 1 as a in terms of our GDP weight in the global economy. We should be able to protect ourselves well, and to do so we need a large defense industrial complex, and you can see some signs of that beginning to emerge under the leadership of Honorable Prime Minister Modi.
Thank you very much, sir.